Today's episode is titled From Roots of Curiosity to Community Mainstay. Our guest is David Reiten, son of Chester and Joy Reiten. Today we'll learn more about the evolution of Norsk Hostfest and its profound impact on Minot, the community, and North Dakota. David sheds light on Chester's personal interest in his Scandinavian heritage and its alignment with the local celebration of the 150th anniversary of the Norwegian migration to America. Through David's insights, listeners gain a deeper understanding of Chester's visionary fortitude and connections, which culminated in the creation of Norsk Hostfest in 1978. They also hear about the festival's pivotal turning point when Myron Floren took the stage and the exponential growth that happened thereafter. Enjoy this conversation with David Reiten. David, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with me. Could you briefly introduce yourself and explain your connection to the Norsk Hostfest?
My name is David Reiten. Just for information, I was born in 1951, to clarify that. And I am the son of Chester and Joy Reiten. And I can get into a little her, that would be my mother, because she had to take a lot of angst and stress and everything as the Hostfest was being built and built up. But I graduated from Minot High. I went to Concordia College. I went to UND Law School. I then practiced private practice of law. And then I went to work for state government. And just to follow up, in 1983, my father bought a TV station. We were in the TV business. And then I got into the TV business, moved to Dickinson, and then eventually moved to Minot. Okay. So I've been in the family business basically for over 30, almost 40 years. And as a result, I was on the outskirts of the Hostfest for the first 20, 25 years of the Hostfest, but then I got involved when I moved to Minot in 1988.
So on the outskirts, when it started, but your mother and father had a pretty key role in helping the Hostfest become the grand vision that it is.
Well, basically, it kind of started off not as a fluke, but it all started in the generating of the idea. It started in 1973. Goes back that far. And my grandparent, my father's father, Lars Reiten, and if that doesn't get any more Norwegian than that, he died. And as they were going through his effects, my father came across some letters that were written in Norwegian. And so he, of course, did not know how to read or write or he talked Norwegian. So he found somebody at Minot State University and had it translated. So found out the town where my father's relatives came from, because they were writing a letter to Sever Reiten. Sever Reiten would have been my father's grandfather. And he came over from Norway in the 1880s, and he settled into right around Valley City. And that was back in the days where you could homestead for land. And Sever Reiten had a section of land, 640 acres. And he had 4 children. And Sever retired when he was about 56. And after he retired, he gave a quarter of land to each of his 4 children. And one of them was Lars Reiten, who would have been my grandfather. And so my Lars got married in the 1920s, and had 3 children, plus adopted another one. But what my father remembers about growing up on the farm, 2 things. Seaver gave each of his kids 160 acres, which wasn't enough to really raise a family, but they tried. And then, of course, the Depression hit in 1929. And they all lost their land, and they were foreclosed on, and everything like that. To make a long story a little bit shorter, so he grew up. My father then went into the Navy during World War II. He went in about 1943, late 43, early 44. And then what happened was he was getting ready. He had a landing ship tank, which was a big ship. He was an ensign. He was the commander of the tank. And what happened was he was getting ready to invade Japan. So he spent a whole year going back and forth the Pacific Ocean as they were getting ready to invade Japan. Of course, then the atomic bomb went off and yada, yada, yada. And then he then got out of the war, went back to NDSU, at the time the Agriculture College, and then became a county agent, got in the radio business, TV business, etc. But we were impacted by World War II by the fact that my mother's brother, coincidentally called Chester Steenson, he was in the Iowa National Guard in 1940, 41. And of course, the National Guard got called up, and he was one of the first troops, fought across North Africa, fought in Sicily, and then he went over to Italy, and he was killed at Anzio. So my mother lost a brother to World War II, like, of course, hundreds of thousands of families did. But my parents met, had 5 kids. My father got a radio business, TV business. But what happened then, when my grandfather Lars died, as I say, they found these letters, had them translated, and then my father wrote, information. What is this? Found out a little about it. But so about the same time, there was a TV show called Roots about an African-American family in America that went through about 3 or 4 generations. And what happened was my father watched the show and said, Roots. I mean, he's talking about generations in the past. And my father knew nothing about his ancestors, absolutely nothing. The only thing he knew a little Norwegian simply because his parents talked to each other in Norwegian when they didn't want their kids to know what they were talking about. That was the code language. And it was interesting because back then, the immigrants, the Scandinavian, I think the Germans and whatever came to North Dakota, the first thing they did was Americanize themselves. They dropped the old language. They didn't care about it. And so that's what happened. But in there was a mix where my father found out the town that he was from. He also became mayor of Minot, so he kind of used his influence and took a group over to Europe of his relatives on his father's side and his mother's side. And this would have been about 1976. So he went over there and brought a whole bunch of relatives. They had a great time, just an absolutely great time. And so they came back, and my father said, I want to celebrate my heritage, the heritage of people from around this area. So he came up with a Hostfest, which was a bunch of Lutheran churches got together, and they sold, I think it was at the Minot Auditorium, and they sold Rumegraut and Klub and stuff like that. So they sold it and it was fun, and then I think they were there for about a year, and then they moved it over to here at the All Seasons Arena, and it was a little bit more people. They had fiddlers there and everything like that. But then they decided that they needed to spice it up. They needed to bring in, this is, we did, this is all right, but let's bring in a little bit more entertainment. So what started the whole kind of grand theme, it was always heritage. You want to celebrate your heritage. But we needed to bring in some more people to celebrate the heritage. So he heard of a celebrity that would probably be willing to make a guest appearance for a few $1,000s. The celebrity was Myron Floren, a legend. And so my father made a contract with him to bring him to Minot. And it was just like Elvis came to town. I mean, they just packed him in. This was Myron Floren of the Lawrence Welk Show. And as a result, it just exploded. And then the next year, they brought him back. And as the Hostfest went along, they brought in, bigger acts and everything like that. And, when you can bring in Bob Hope, Tom Jones, George Burns, from then on, it became an entertainment.
And from what I've read, and even the conversations that I've had, it was not initially conceived as the grand festival that it became. It was, let's celebrate the food, let's celebrate people. Evidently, a big part of Scandinavian culture is just visiting.
A big part of a lot of cultures is just visiting, bringing in relatives and everything like that. And that's what it was. Like I said, Krunkaka celebrates some Norwegian stuff, and it was Norsk Hostfest, was Norwegian, which was predominantly the Lutheran churches in Minot.
So it started as the Scandinavian Heritage Festival and became the Hostfest in the 80s.
Yeah, it became that in the 80s. So it was, it just grew exponentially. And one of the people, Chester, my father, had all these advisors, but one of the things was Pam Davy became kind of the day-to-day person. And she was well organized and everything like that. And with her organization and things like that, she was very helpful in helping my father and these other people expand.
It was undoubtedly a team effort.
It was undoubtedly a team effort.
And you mentioned your mom put up with a lot from your dad.
It was just like any other famous person, the spouse, usually a wife, gets some of the, frustration and everything. But, it never, of course, caused any breakups or anything. But my father, she could hear him, kind of talk loudly into phone trying to bring in an act or something happened. But she was there all the time, and it just worked out really, really great.
What do you remember from your first time coming to the Hostfest?
I didn't make the first time till I'd been here about maybe 5 or 6 years, if that. And
you won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I don't hold it. I was in Dickinson. They were doing this festival, and it's probably the early 80s. I really didn't know that much about it, except my father was spending more and more time on it. And so I came here, and it was 2 halls here at the All Seasons Arena, one for entertainment and then one for eating. And, but it was growing and growing and growing. And one of the things that led to the success of the Norsk Hostfest, every year they would hold a meeting. My father, his group of advisors, a lot of the people that participated, people like Pam, Davy, and they say, what worked, what didn't work, what do we have to change to make this better? And an example of that was in the Great Hall, they would have a show, but it was kind of festival seating. You got in there, and of course, what everybody did is they put their coat on the chair and then they walked around. Classic move, just like anything else. And so people would kind of hog the chairs and everything like that. And so people were getting frustrated. They come later and they didn't have a chair or they're way in the back. And it was kind of funny. So one of the major things that they did was, we're going to have assigned seating, and then we're going to have a couple different shows. So we're going to have to clear out everybody, basically cleanse it of all people. And then later in the evening, they open up the doors, assign seating, and in you go. So that's what they did. And, but that was the thing that helped it explode into the future. 2 shows, clean everybody out, 2 shows a day, things like that. And it really, helped do that. And then they talk about, food vendors, and then they talk about our artisans, and then they talk about vendors, and trying to bring all these people in order to do Scandinavia, Norwegian, and then just, buying and selling of coats and sweaters and everything like that. So,
and new ideas came in here year after year. Do you recall how big the vision was when it began versus how big the vision became over time?
The big vision when it began was to sell more Krumkak and Lefse the next year than the previous year. And, maybe get some more entertainment, some, fiddlers, but it was literally Myron Floren that caused the big entertainment explosion. And, they never looked back after that.
So really, it was almost for your father and the team when Myron Floren came in. That was fireworks, the big light bulb of potential.
Yeah, what a turning point. And, who knows how long the Hostfest would have lasted other than a fall festival that, they all got together, and it probably would have petered out after about 3 or 4 years. Who knows? But Myron Floren.
Something I keep going back to, Dave, is there are a lot of people here in North Dakota that have never experienced the Hostfest. It is rich with experiences and cuisine, entertainment, with craftsmanship. And I feel that something that keeps coming up today when I'm chatting with people is the power of community that has been grown at the Hostfest. How do we welcome people here and encourage them into these halls who don't necessarily feel that pre-existing connection to the Hostfest or to Scandinavian culture?
That's one of the difficulties of any sort of entertainment, or any sort of project, is you got to find a way to excite them and to bring them in. And for many years, it was kind of word of mouth. People would come, they'd have a great time, and they'd tell all their neighbors. At one time, at the peak, we would bring in 40 tour buses, and we would have several hundred RVs. And, because they were coming from Minnesota and Iowa. They still are, but, those people, I hate to say this, but they're they're in the sunset years. And so we're having a difficult time getting the younger people to appreciate what the Hostfest has to offer. So many young people see pictures of it and a bunch of old people, And, nobody really cares that much about their background, their relatives. There's not a sense of heritage or tradition. And so, for each, one person that kind of fades into the sunset, we don't have anybody to replace them. And so it's kind of fading away. But the people that come really enjoy themselves. But, there's other forms of entertainment, when you have stuff like Indian casinos, you have the Bismarck Event Center, you have the Alaris Center, you have the Fargo Dome. We have a lake cabin just outside of Detroit Lakes. And each time I drive into town to do something, I see a billboard for Shooting Star Casino. And I see people on that billboard that said they should come to the Hostfest. They should play at the Hostfest. But they got the casinos, and they travel 50 miles instead of 500 miles, and we have to make sure we have good entertainment, but we have to make sure that we're pushing the heritage, and so people have additional reason to come to the Hostfest.
People, I think, are connected to community or connected to experiences. People are also connected to people. That's something that has come up again in these conversations as well, the friendships and bonds that have been made here at the Hostfest. There are a lot of small moments that occur when you meet people and you willfully engage with others. I found that to be true about festivals anywhere, Hostfest or otherwise. Festivals are cultural epicenters where people travel from all over to exist and be, and there aren't really that many opportunities like that in Minot to connect with so many different people from all over the world, from different walks of life.
And at one time, and I hate to say this, but you'll agree, that connection was big, but as a new generation comes, it's regretfully smartphones, it's Facebook. They can be used to bring in and connect people, but a lot of times it's just that's all they want is what they have on their smartphone, and they don't feel a human connection. And that's what we're losing in our society in the last 10, 20 years. There's a community only on the smartphone, and it's not almost like it's a face-to-face or human connection. It's just digital.
I won't argue that strongly. I will say people like to be together at experiences, and festivals pull people together. Even a Scandinavian one that people discount as just being for old folks. It's very much not.
You can take a look as you walk along the halls. Everybody's having a great time. Yeah. They're smiling. They're having a great time. When they're eating across from somebody, they'll start a conversation. We've had, long range friendships that were formed, not only from people from Minot with other people from out of state, but people from different towns, realizing, they have something in common, and they may be from Williston. They knew people in Fargo, and they get a connection, and it lasts for years.
Aside from your mother and your father and your team, who would have thought Minot could be such a crossroads of valuable connection, heritage, and tradition?
Nobody. And, it's not a fluke, because once they got on track, they were able to build it up. But, Minot was never thought of a communication or a introduction, hub of any sort. It was just a town that you kind of drove through. And this Hostfest just made everybody stop for 4 days, and they got their RVs and things like that. And it turned into a real good getting to know people and friendships and everything like that.
Well, it's a place where you make memories. It's not just a place where you can eat something or buy something or see an entertainer. It is a place where memories are built. Memories are the stories of our lives, and they are the most important thing. When you start to get into those sunset years, your memories are what you have left. What would you say to somebody that has never experienced the Hostfest? What is your elevator pitch to someone that's never been here, but they're aware of it, but have never been here?
You're going to have a great time. It's just a lot of fun. And you can learn stuff and everything like that, but it's just something that come and experience. it's just very disappointing, not tragic, about the number of people from Minot that haven't even been to the Hostfest one time. But once they come, they're hooked. And, they just enjoy themselves and they have a great time. And I've always called it the second happiest place on earth. What's the happiest place on earth? It's Disneyland. And I'd say second happiest place on earth publicly more so, but I didn't want to get sued by a big mouse. So that's what I consider. You walk around here and everybody's happy.
I think, again, too, the core aspect of any festival experience is happiness, connectivity. It's learning new things. And it strikes me, it's just so wild. We're getting world-class artisans, craftsmen, entertainers right here in our own backyard.
Yeah. And they're coming. Some of these artisans and people like that, vendors, they're coming from places like Michigan, Iowa, southern Minnesota, South Dakota. We've had a few from Montana, kind of the upper Midwest. But they come and they bring some stuff that they sell and show, and it's just great stuff.
Why does this matter? Why do you think the Hostfest matters?
Because you can try and get a connection. It doesn't happen automatically, but you can get a connection with a community, and that makes it feel good. And that's important for not only Minot and the Hostfest, but just for human beings.
That's a perfect answer. Community is a word we've heard a lot today, and I feel a sense of community when I'm here. I feel a sense of belonging. I find that people want to belong to something. Is the Norsk Hostfest a place where people belong?
It is very much a place where people belong. And the one statistic that we'd always say is at one time we would have over 4,000 volunteers at the Hostfest, 10% of the population. And so, but it was 4,000 volunteers. We had, when I first took over, I just asked somebody, we're going to have a committee meeting. Okay, all right. So I said, fine. What are we talking? We're going to talk to 10 different committees. No, we had 104 different committees throughout. Probably had too many, but that's what it was. And so it was quite a chore to get all those 4,000 people, but they all had a sense of community, and they passed it on to their family, and they passed it on to their friends, and everybody had a great time.
What does community mean to you?
To me, community means being together with a bunch of people to enjoy fellowship and companionship and share knowledge and share life stories. And it's something that, the country's kind of drifted away from. And I don't like to keep bringing that up, but this kind of slows that down, because everybody who leaves the Norsk Hostfest is happy and had a great time and are looking forward to coming back.
Is this a place for curious people?
Very much so, as any festival would. And they get to learn stuff, they get to meet stuff, they get to hear entertainment and see vendors that they probably never knew existed.
All right, so for anyone who ever has been curious, poke your head into the Hostfest.
You bet. And I'd poke myself into a German Oktoberfest, just curious, what's this heritage all about?
What was your experience there?
They were a little bit more into the eating and drinking. It's all changed.
Dave, do you have a favorite memory from the Hostfest or a key moment that you can share?
There's a bunch of it, but it's just the whole thing. As I walked through it when I was president, I walked through it and I'd see all these people just thoroughly enjoying themselves. There's nothing, one specific thing that I could point off right now off the top of my head, but it was just the enjoyment of everybody was having a great time. Everybody was happy. And everybody was looking forward to coming back the next year. And it just really was fun to be associated with.
Yeah, that's a great sense of accomplishment on your part and your family for bringing this together.
And now, but the volunteers, 4,000 volunteers. It's a small army of volunteers. Yeah.
For someone who's coming into the Hostfest for their first time, what is your biggest recommendation you'd give to them?
As soon as you get here, just walk through, just see everything that's going on. See what everybody's doing. See how much people are having fun, and just walk through, get a sense of what's happening, and then start going back to side stages and to food and to vendors and then looking at the Great Hall. But just take in the whole, walk for an hour or two and just see what this place is all about, and they'll get caught up in it.
All right, Dave. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about the Hostfest or the history or the story that I didn't ask?
Just that it took a long time. A lot of people helped. My father and the family got a lot of attention, but it was just a whole group of people that came together to make this thing work. They had great loyalty to the Hostfest. They always look forward to every year. And there's nothing better, if kind of strangely, to see somebody's obituary that mentions the work they did as a volunteer at the Norsk Hostfest. And so they took it literally their whole lives. And it's something that Minot can be very proud of. The community can be very proud of. North Dakota can be very proud of. And it's just a lot of fun.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. For more information on the Norsk Hostfest, please visit www.hostfest.com. This podcast was made possible by the Minot Area Community Foundation's Williamson Fund and the generous support of private donors. Thank you for listening.